Okay, so picture this. You're having a terrible day and your German friend asks, wie geht's? And you freeze up. All you can manage is, ich bin nicht gut. And meanwhile, your brain is screaming with frustration, exhaustion, and like 10 other emotions you can't express in German. Well, all that ends today. And I've got a simple 3-level system that will let you express exactly how you feel, no matter the situation. Grüß Gott, hallo, ich bin Billy Badger und heute tauchen wir tief in die Welt unserer Gefühle ein. So today we're going to learn how to answer that deceptively simple question, wie geht's? Now sure, you could say gut, danke, but this doesn't really cover that huge range of emotions and feelings that we experience on a daily basis. We're going to work our way through 3 different levels, and you'll find a lot more detail in this week's free download. In level 1, we'll assess how we're doing and describe basic emotions. Level 2 introduces a key construction for health issues and complex feelings, and level 3 covers physical sensations and reaction verbs. There's a lot to cover, so let's get moving. In our first level, we want to be able to respond quickly and honestly to the question, wie geht's? Or maybe, wie geht's dir? And if we're speaking more formally, wie geht es Ihnen? Whichever way we ask it, the question wants to know, how's it going for you? And there are lots of ways to answer this, but the simplest way is to decide where we are on this sliding scale. Mir geht's super if you're doing really well, all the way down to es geht mir nicht gut at the other end of the scale if things are going really badly. But let's give some more information, and the easiest way to talk about our feelings is to use a simple adjective. And this is how we're going to talk about our basic emotions. But before we dive into German emotion words, let's see what you already know. Grab a bit of paper and a pen or open up your notes app, hit pause and write down as many words for emotions as you can in, say, 30 seconds. This will set your base level so you can gauge your progress. Ready? Go. Okay, time's up. How many did you get? Let's see if you got any of these. There's quite a long list here. So in this week's guide, I've divided them up into a few different categories. Maybe you're feeling positive about life, vielleicht. Bist du glücklich, fröhlich, stolz oder einfach zufrieden? But then there'll be times where you need adjectives like sauer, genervt, or einsam if things are looking maybe just a little bit less rosy. And then of course there are others we can use to describe our various energy states. Maybe you're tired. So think about whether you're tired in the sense of being sleepy, müde oder schläfrig, or whether you're physically or mentally tired from all that exertion of learning new adjectives. Ich bin fertig. If you're exhausted, you could go for erschöpft, schlapp, or ich bin total hin. Or if you're influenced by Austrian German, you might want to say something like ich bin total hinig. And so here's your challenge for level 1. Just like we did in last week's video where we worked on narrating our actions, this week try checking in regularly with how you're feeling. You won't be asking yourself, what am I doing? But what am I feeling? Ask yourself, wie geht's? And then give yourself an initial assessment. Mir geht's gut. Mir geht's nicht so gut. That sort of thing. And then try putting a name to what you're feeling. Just use the simple phrase, ich bin, then choose a suitable adjective. Make a list of all of the emotions that you feel throughout the week in this week's guide. Well, these ich bin constructions are pretty good for describing basic emotions that you're feeling right now. But what about when somebody asks you how you've been feeling lately? When you need to talk about your health, maybe your overall well-being, or even those complex feelings that are a little bit hard to pin down. Well, this is where Germans use a different construction, sich, fühlen. And it's not just a direct substitute for ich bin, because there are specific situations where we'll use sich fühlen, and if we use it with the wrong adjective, something will sound off. We can, of course, make simple assessments of our well-being using the sliding scale that we already know. So maybe ich fühle mich super, all the way down to ich fühle mich furchtbar. But we also have a range of ways to describe health and physical well-being. Ich fühle mich krank, ich fühle mich unwohl, ich fühle mich schwach, ich fühle mich schlapp. Most of the adjectives from earlier don't sound natural with sich fühlen, but a few do. Okay, so let's test your intuition. Read out these sentences aloud. Ich bin müde and ich fühle mich immer so müde. 5 seconds to think. What's the difference? Well, the first is a temporary condition. Du musst nur schlafen, dann geht's dir wieder gut. But the second is often a chronic issue you tell maybe a doctor about. Fühle mich is the experience of that state. We can also use this construction to describe more complex psychological feelings that are perhaps hard to pin down. Ich fühle mich überfordert if you're feeling overwhelmed. Ich fühle mich ausgeschlossen if you're feeling left out. Or maybe ich fühle mich fehl am Platz if you're feeling like you're in the wrong place or out of your element. So ich bin communicates our state of being. Ich fühle mich conveys how we experience that state. Ich bin allein means you are alone. Ich fühle mich allein doesn't necessarily mean that you are alone, but you feel that way. So here's your challenge for level 2. Ask yourself the same question. Wie geht's? But this time use ich fühle mich to describe those more complex emotions. Not all of the adjectives from level 1 will work here, so focus on the new ones listed in this week's guide. Try slipping 3 or 4 sich fühlen sentences into your day. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And you'll find a full list in this week's free guide. Alright, so we have learned a couple of ways to express our feelings in German. Now it's time to take things up a notch. And in this section, we've got 2 really useful tools that are handy to have. First up, we've got the personal dative, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with this because we use it to describe how something feels to us. When we say mir ist kalt, then you're not just cold, you're saying this is the way that I'm experiencing the temperature. We have quite a few other adjectives that work in much the same way. If something's embarrassing, then we'll say das war mir peinlich. It was embarrassing to me. If you're feeling sick, then you can say mir ist schlecht or mir ist übel. And if you're bored, then the phrase mir ist langweilig expresses this very nicely. Oh, and here's a nice one. Mir ist zum Weinen zumute. I feel like crying. I've got a few more of these in this week's guide, but let's move on to our second tool where we use specific verbs to describe our emotional reactions to certain events. And these come with an impersonal subject like es or das. And here you'll see that some external event or thing is responsible for our emotional state or reaction. For example, das nervt mich. That annoys me. Es ärgert mich. It makes me angry. Das kotzt mich an. That really gets to me or it makes me sick. Das freut mich. That makes me happy. And a number of these verbs also work in a reflexive form where the emphasis is now on our own emotional state. Sich freuen is a common one, and we can use it with 2 different prepositions depending on what we are trying to say. If you're visiting me, I might say ich freue mich über deinen Besuch. I'm happy about your visit. If I know you're coming and I'm looking forward to it, then it makes sense to say ich freue mich auf deinen Besuch. Or if someone's visiting who I don't necessarily want to see, then I can say ich ärgere mich über seinen Besuch if I'm annoyed about his visit. So here's your challenge then for this level. Step 1, make a short list of the phrases that really fit your life and the sorts of reactions that you are likely to have. And step 2, have a go at trying to put a name to your feelings whenever you experience them and say them out aloud using these new forms. You'll find much more examples and detailed explanations in this week's free guide. So visit the link in the description und danke fürs Zuschauen. Auf Wiedersehen und tschüss.